Vacations are supposed to be a break, right? I needed one. Real bad. Life had been a punch to the gut lately, between the divorce papers still sitting unsigned on my kitchen counter and the company restructuring that left me clinging to my job by my fingernails. So, I figured I'd hit Hawaii. Sun, sand, and no emails. Just me, trying to piece myself back together on some distant shore where nobody knew my name. Finding the right Airbnb was a task in itself. Most places were either overpriced tourist traps or downright depressing shacks masquerading as rustic retreats. Then I found it. A 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom beachfront house for a steal, only $100 a night. The listing had professional photos showing hardwood floors, an open concept living room, and windows that promised endless ocean views. The reviews were sparse but positive, though none were recent. Too good to pass up, I thought. Maybe the universe finally threw me a bone. The booking process was oddly quick. No back and forth with the host, just an immediate confirmation and a set of check-in instructions. I should have known then that something was off, but desperation has a way of dulling your instincts. I caught my flight out of O'Hare on a Wednesday morning. The plane ride was endless. Crying babies, a guy who wouldn't stop coughing, and turbulence that had me white-knuckling the armrest. By the time we touched down in paradise, I was running on empty, powered by nothing but airport coffee and the promise of peace and quiet. The rental car place gave me a beaten-up Civic that had seen better days. The air conditioning wheezed more than it cooled, and something in the engine made an unsettling clicking sound. But it moved, and that was enough. The drive to the Airbnb started normally enough. Typical tourist stuff. Beaches and palm trees and sunburned visitors taking selfies. But as I followed the GPS deeper into the island, things changed. The roads narrowed, the pavement giving way to gravel in places. The tropical vegetation grew denser, creating a green tunnel that seemed to swallow my car. The GPS signal flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought I'd lost it completely. But then it came back, the robotic voice guiding me down a winding path that didn't look like it had seen maintenance in years. "You have arrived at your destination," the GPS announced, and I killed the engine. The house stood before me, and something in my gut twisted. Don't get me wrong, it looked exactly like the photos. A quaint beach house with weathered blue siding, white trim, and a wraparound porch that probably offered amazing sunset views. But something felt off. The windows seemed to stare back at me, like eyes watching my every move. The wind rustled through the surrounding palms, creating whispers that sounded almost like words. I grabbed my bags from the trunk, trying to shake off the creeping unease. The key was supposed to be under a potted plant by the door, one of those fake rocks that fool exactly nobody. I found it easily enough, though the rock felt oddly warm to the touch, warmer than it should have been, even in the Hawaiian sun. The lock turned with a click that echoed in the strange silence. No birds singing, I realized. Aren't tropical islands supposed to be full of bird calls? The door swung open with a creak that belonged in a horror movie, revealing a dim interior that smelled of sea salt and something else, something older and mustier that I couldn't quite place. I fumbled for the light switch, and yellowed bulbs flickered to life, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. I dumped my bags in what looked like the master bedroom, king-sized bed, ensuite bathroom, and those promised ocean views through windows that needed a good cleaning. The bedsheets were crisp and clean, hospital corner tight, but something about their pristine whiteness felt wrong in this otherwise lived-in space. Exhausted from the journey, I decided to do a quick walkthrough before unpacking. The house was cozy enough, that fireplace I'd seen in the photos, which did seem oddly out of place in Hawaii. The kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that looked like they belonged in a cooking show, and a dining room with a table set for 6. Though I couldn't imagine 6 people fitting comfortably in this space. My throat was dry from the travel, so I headed to the kitchen for water. The fridge hummed quietly. Too quietly. Really, like it was trying not to draw attention to itself. When I opened it, the light inside flickered twice before settling into a steady glow. It was mostly empty, save for some condiments and a bottle of white wine with no label. That's when I saw it. An envelope, yellowed with age, taped to the inside of the door. The edges were stained with something dark that I told myself was just water damage. My name, Steve, was written on it in elegant cursive, the kind they don't teach in schools anymore. I stared at it for a long moment, my hand hovering near, but not quite touching it. In my line of work, insurance adjustment, unexpected letters usually mean bad news. But this was vacation. This was supposed to be my escape. Finally, curiosity won out. I peeled the envelope from the door, noting how the paper felt wrong somehow. Too thick, almost leathery. Inside was a folded piece of paper that looked newer than the envelope, though not by much. The paper crackled as I unfolded it, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet house. The handwriting was the same as on the envelope, precise, almost mechanical in its perfection. "Hello, Steve," it began, and something cold slithered down my spine. How long had this envelope been waiting for me? The letter continued. "Thank you for choosing to stay at this Airbnb for the week. I hope your stay is a good one. But first, you must read the rules. Rule 1. We do not have a maid. If a tall woman in a maroon dress knocks on the front door claiming to be the maid, do not open the door. 1A. If the woman returns the next day, hide, preferably in a room with a lock. Rule 2. Never leave open food in the fridge for more than 2 days. Rule 3. If you wake up in the middle of the night and see a man in your kitchen, don't freak out. He will be gone by morning. Rule 4. Don't go outside after the sun goes down. Rule 5. If you see a little kid in the pool, call the number on the fridge and inform them. They will send someone to handle it. Rule 6. If you walk up the stairs and see a little girl holding a teddy bear, go into the first door on your left, grab a toy from the box, place it in front of the girl, then go downstairs for 15 minutes. It will be safe afterward. Shesta A. If the girl doesn't leave, run. Rule 7. Never go into the attic, even if you hear noises. The note ended with that neat signature. Sincerely, the owner. I read it 3 times, my heart rate picking up with each pass. This had to be a joke, right? Some local's idea of messing with tourists, or maybe the owner's quirky way of making stays memorable. But if it was meant to be funny, the punchline was lost on me. I could feel the regret settling in my stomach like a lead weight. The rational part of my brain, the part that dealt with insurance claims and mortgage payments, tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was a liability thing, some weird way of warning about local wildlife or trespassers. But another part of my brain, a more primitive part that remembered being afraid of the dark, whispered that something else was going on here. I pulled out my phone to call the owner, to demand an explanation, or maybe just cancel my stay altogether. No signal. Of course. I moved around the house, holding my phone up like some kind of digital divining rod, searching for even one bar of reception. Nothing. Just then, the doorbell rang. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet house, making me jump so hard I dropped my phone. It clattered against the hardwood floor, the screen lighting up with the no-service message that seemed to mock me now. Another ring, more insistent this time. I approached the front door cautiously, my feet silent on the old floorboards, which was strange because they'd creaked under my weight earlier. The peephole was one of those old-fashioned brass ones, the kind that distorts everything into a fisheye view of reality. Through it, I saw her. A tall woman in a maroon dress, exactly as the rules had described. Her face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat that looked like something from another era. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her, waiting. Then she knocked again, 3 sharp raps that seemed to reverberate through my bones. "Hello, sir," she called out, her voice pleasant and professional, like a flight attendant's. "I'm the maid. I'm here to clean the house." Rule number 1 echoed in my mind. Do not open the door. "There must be some mistake," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't told about any maid service. She didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched out, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the distant crash of waves that suddenly seemed very far away. "Sir," she said finally, her voice different now. Lower, rougher, like something trying to remember how to sound human. "I need to clean. The house needs cleaning. Let me in." The knocking resumed, but it wasn't the polite tapping from before. This was a pounding, relentless and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The door shuddered in its frame with each impact, and I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the rug. I fell hard, the impact driving the air from my lungs. The pounding continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. I lay there on the floor, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no waves, not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I gathered the courage to look through the peephole again. The porch was empty. I spent the next hour pacing the house, double-checking every lock and window. My phone still showed no signal, and the house's Wi-Fi password from the welcome packet connected to nothing. I was effectively cut off from the outside world, trapped in this house with its strange rules and whatever had just pretended to be a maid. The logical thing would have been to leave, to get in that beat-up Civic and drive until I found civilization again. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity, or maybe something else. Something that had been waiting for me since I first saw that too good to be true listing. By late afternoon, the humidity had become unbearable. The house's air conditioning worked, but barely, pushing around warm air that seemed to stick to my skin. A swim started to sound good. Too good to resist, despite everything that had happened. The pool I'd seen from my bedroom window beckoned, promising relief from both the heat and my growing anxiety. I changed into swim trunks, grabbed a towel from the bathroom, noticing how it smelled faintly of mothballs, and headed out back. The pool was smaller than it had looked from above, kidney-shaped and surrounded by concrete that had seen better days. The water was clear, though, invitingly blue in the late afternoon sun. I dipped a toe in. Perfect temperature. Before long, I was swimming laps, trying to wash away the memory of the woman in the maroon dress. The water felt good, normal, and for a few minutes, I could almost pretend this was just a regular vacation. That's when I saw him. He appeared without sound or warning. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, sitting cross-legged at the edge of the pool. He wore red swim trunks and nothing else, his pale skin almost translucent in the sunlight. But it was his eyes that made my heart skip a beat. They were vacant, unfocused, like dusty marbles set into a doll's face. He stared at me, or through me, his head tilted at an angle that looked wrong on a human neck. I froze in the water, my feet finding the bottom of the pool. Rule number 5 screamed in my head. If you see a little kid in the pool, call the number on the fridge. The boy's head tilted further than it should have been able to go, until his ear nearly touched his shoulder. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I bolted from the pool, water cascading off me as I ran for the house. I didn't bother with the towel, leaving wet footprints across the hardwood as I sprinted to the kitchen. The phone number was there on a yellow sticky note, the ink slightly faded but still legible. My hands shook as I dialed on the landline phone, wondering if it would even work. It did, connecting on the first ring. Hello? The voice was crisp, professional, as if they'd been waiting for my call. Yeah, hi, I stammered, water still dripping onto the floor. My name is Steve. I'm at the Airbnb. There's a kid by the pool. The silence that followed felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken knowledge. Then the voice returned, calm but commanding. Listen carefully. Lock all the doors and windows. Do not, under any circumstances, look outside. Someone will be there shortly. The line went dead. I ran through the house, checking every lock, drawing every curtain. As I passed the windows facing the pool, I fought the urge to look outside. But human nature is a powerful thing, and at the last window, I couldn't help myself. I lifted the corner of the curtain just slightly. The boy was still there, but he'd moved. He now stood at the edge of the pool, his back to the house. Water dripped from his body, forming a perfect circle around his feet, despite the fact that he hadn't been in the pool. As if sensing my gaze, he began to turn. I dropped the curtain and backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. The doorbell rang. For a moment, panic seized me. Had the woman in maroon returned? But when I checked the peephole, I saw 2 men in black suits, their faces expressionless. They didn't wait for me to open the door, instead producing a key and letting themselves in. They moved with practiced efficiency, not speaking a word to me. One headed straight for the backyard while the other stood guard at the door. I caught glimpses of equipment in their hands, things that looked military but somehow wrong, like technology from another time or place. I sat on the couch, my wet swim trunks soaking into the fabric, listening to sounds I couldn't identify coming from the backyard. Once, I heard what might have been a child's laugh, but it was cut off abruptly, replaced by a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. 2 hours passed before they returned inside. The one who had gone to the pool looked different somehow. His suit was dry but wrinkled in impossible ways, and a thin trickle of what looked like blood ran from his nose. "It's safe now," he said, his voice flat and mechanical. Without another word, they left, the door clicking shut behind them. I waited until their car pulled away before looking out the window. The pool was still there, still blue, still inviting. But the water was completely still, unnaturally so, as if it had been frozen solid despite the Hawaiian heat. After the pool incident, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching me. Every creak, every shadow, every reflection in the windows seemed loaded with meaning. The sun was starting to set, painting the walls in shades of orange and red that looked uncomfortably like dried blood. I needed to eat something, but the thought of cooking made my stomach turn. I hadn't brought any food in with me, and after the rules about the fridge, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Still, I had to check what supplies were available. Opening the kitchen cabinets revealed a strange assortment of items. Canned goods with labels so faded I couldn't read them, boxes of crackers that looked new but had expiration dates from 3 years ago, and a single box of cereal that rattled in a way cereal shouldn't. I closed the cabinets and decided hunger was better than whatever was in there. The sun had almost set now, and rule number 4 echoed in my head. Don't go outside after dark. Through the kitchen window, I could see the last rays of sunlight disappearing behind the trees. The darkness that followed seemed thicker than normal, almost liquid in its density. My phone still showed no signal, but the screen displayed 8:47 p.m., hours to go before morning. I decided to distract myself with TV, but when I turned it on, all channels showed static except one, a local station playing what looked like old cartoons, but something was off about them. The characters' movements were too jerky, their voices pitched slightly wrong, and their eyes seemed to follow me around the room. I switched it off quickly. The house settled into night sounds, the typical creaks and groans of an old building, but also other noises I couldn't quite identify. Something that might have been footsteps in the attic. Rule 7. Never go into the attic, even if you hear noises. A sound like fingernails on glass from somewhere upstairs, and occasionally, very faintly, what sounded like a child's laughter. I checked my watch, 9:23 p.m. The digital display flickered for a moment, showing what looked like strange symbols before returning to normal numbers. I decided to try sleeping. At least unconsciousness would make the time pass faster. Sleep didn't come easily. The bed was comfortable enough, but every time I started to drift off, some new sound would jerk me back to awareness. The waves crashing outside should have been soothing, but their rhythm seemed wrong somehow, as if they were hitting the shore in Morse code. When I finally did fall asleep, it was the kind of shallow, uneasy rest that leaves you more tired than before. I dreamed of the boy from the pool, but in the dream, his head kept turning, until it had spun completely around multiple times like a grotesque corkscrew. I jolted awake at exactly 3:33 a.m. The numbers glowed an angry red on the bedside clock. Something had woken me, some noise from downstairs. I lay there in the darkness, listening to my own heartbeat when I heard it, the distinct sound of someone moving around in the kitchen. Rule number 3. If you wake up in the middle of the night and see a man in your kitchen, don't freak out. He will be gone by morning. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in bed, to pull the covers over my head like a child and wait for dawn. But I had to know, had to see. I crept to the bedroom door, wincing at every tiny creak of the floorboards. The hallway was dark, but a faint light spilled up the stairs from the kitchen. Not electric light, but something softer, more organic, like bioluminescence. Step by careful step, I made my way down the stairs, clinging to the wall to avoid the worst of the creaks. The glow got stronger as I approached the kitchen, casting everything in a pale, sickly blue. And there he was. He stood at the counter, his back to me, dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned suit. He was tall, too tall, his head nearly brushing the ceiling, and unnaturally thin. His movements were wrong, jerky like a marionette, as he appeared to be preparing something on the counter. Don't freak out. He'll be gone by morning. I started to back away slowly, but I must have made some small noise because he stopped moving. Just stopped, completely still, like a photograph. Then, very slowly, his head began to turn. I ran, back up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, not caring about the noise now. I slammed the bedroom door and dove under the covers, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I lay there, shaking, straining to hear any sound of footsteps following me. Nothing came. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep again, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows. I went downstairs cautiously, my throat dry, desperately needing water. The kitchen was empty, everything exactly as it had been the day before. Except, on the counter was a single teacup, filled with something dark that steamed gently in the morning light. Next to it was a note in that same perfect handwriting. You weren't supposed to look. I spent the morning in a daze, the teacup on the counter a constant reminder that this wasn't just my imagination running wild. I'd poured its contents down the drain, watching the liquid leave an iridescent film that slowly crawled back up the drain pipe before disappearing. My phone still showed no signal, but the time kept changing in strange ways, sometimes jumping forward hours, sometimes backward, sometimes displaying impossible numbers like 2561. I'd given up on it as a reliable way to track time. The sun moved across the sky too quickly, or maybe my perception of time was warped by fear and lack of sleep. Either way, evening approached far sooner than it should have. I needed to get supplies, food, water, maybe a weapon, but Rule 4 echoed in my mind. Don't go outside after dark, and darkness was coming fast. I decided to do one last check of the house before sunset, looking for anything I might have missed that could help me understand what was happening. That's when I made my fatal mistake. I went upstairs. She was there, standing at the end of the hallway. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with pigtails that hung at slightly different lengths. She clutched a teddy bear that looked wrong somehow, its proportions off, its button eyes reflecting light that didn't exist. But it was her eyes that froze me in place, dark, bottomless pits that seemed to swallow the light around them. Rule 6 kicked in through my panic. If you walk up the stairs and see a little girl holding a teddy bear, go into the first door on your left, grab a toy from the box, place it in front of the girl, then go downstairs for 15 minutes. The first door on the left. I turned slowly, keeping the girl in my peripheral vision. The door was there, though I could have sworn this hallway had been differently arranged before. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. The room beyond was small, barely larger than a closet, and completely empty except for a cardboard box in the center. The box looked old, water-stained and soft at the corners. Inside were toys, dozens of them, all looking decades old and slightly wrong. A doll with too many fingers. A toy car with windows that seemed to show actual darkness inside. A wooden train that felt warm to the touch, like it had a fever. I grabbed the first thing my hand touched, a small boat made of what felt like bone rather than wood. Rule 6 hadn't specified what kind of toy to use, and I wasn't about to stay long enough to be picky. The girl hadn't moved when I came out, but her head had turned to follow me, her neck bent at an impossible angle. I placed the bone boat at her feet, trying not to look directly at her face, then backed away toward the stairs. Run, run, run. My instincts screamed, but I forced myself to walk, down the stairs, into the living room. I collapsed onto the couch, my heart hammering in my chest, and looked at my watch. 15 minutes. I just had to wait 15 minutes. The seconds crawled by. The house had gone completely silent. No creaks, no waves, not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just the sound of my own breathing and the tick-tick-tick of my watch, which seemed to be slowing down. 14 minutes. The silence grew heavier, pressing against my eardrums. 13 minutes. Was that humming coming from upstairs? 12 minutes. The light in the room seemed to be dimming, though the sun shouldn't have set yet. 10 minutes. The humming had definitely gotten louder, and now it had a melody, a twisted version of a lullaby I almost recognized. 8 minutes. The temperature was dropping. I could see my breath. 5 minutes. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of something dragging across the floor upstairs. 3 minutes. Footsteps. Small, light footsteps coming down the stairs. 2 minutes. They stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I kept my eyes fixed on my watch. 1 minute. Something was breathing behind me. Time up. I looked up from my watch. She was still there. Rule 6A. If the girl doesn't leave, run. I bolted for the front door, my fingers fumbling with the locks. Behind me, the girl made a sound. Not a child's laugh, but something older. Something that sounded like metal scraping against bone. The door finally opened, and I burst out onto the porch, only to realize with horror, the sun had already gone down.